Thank you for turning to page 121. Well, got a tough one today. We're going to take a look at the first edition Bard from the Player's Handbook, as written in the back of the Player's Handbook. During the first edition, during its lifetime in the early to mid-80s, there were a couple of different versions of Bard that came out from different sources, primarily from Dragon Magazine. And we tried some of those, and the one from Dragon wasn't bad. But we actually stayed with this one. I have, as a DM, have DM'd 2 players who developed bards, and I myself developed a bard that I played for years. In fact, my bard became a legacy character. That is a character that's handed down from myself or my wife to one of our kids. In this case, we handed down Billy Shears, my bard, went to my son Adam, and he's been playing it now in our campaign for close to 10 years. So we're going to take a look at the bard out of the book, how it's not an impossible class. It's just a really difficult class, but it definitely can be done. And the benefits of being a bard. So I recommend it. So we're going to take a good look at it and talk you into playing it. So today on page 121, the Bard from the Player's Handbook. The Bard, the impossible class, the super class, the so tough you can't even try it class. Nah. The Bard is doable. First, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Larry Anderson, who's a viewer who has requested this video a couple of times. I think he's trying to talk his son into playing a bard. The bard is an attainable class, Larry's son, so I'm going to prove it through this video. So today we're going to be starting out, we're in the place that the bard is listed in the Player's Handbook. It's in the back as an appendix, which is strange, but it's Appendix 2, right after Psionics, which we do not use in our campaign. We have the bard. And the Bard class subsumes the function of 2 other classes, fighters and thieves, and taps them off with magical abilities. It's often not allowed by DMs. So first thing you got to do with a Bard, and we're going to get to that when we get to the stats you need for a Bard, is you need the cooperation of your DM. When I did my Bard and the Bards that I've allowed in my campaign, and by the way, when I say allowed, Bards are always allowed in my campaign. Qualifying for a Bard is tough. You have to have a 15 or better in the following abilities: strength, wisdom, dex, and charisma. And you have to have a minimum 12 in intelligence and 10 in constitution. That's a pretty high bar, especially in the old rolling system of 3 dice 6, no rerolls. Take them in the order you get them. On that note, I once rolled a monk with using 3 dice 6, no rerolls in the order we got them. I rolled enough to qualify for a monk back in 1980 and ran him for years. Still have him. I just haven't played him in a long time. And I named him Bloge Mayfair. If anyone can tell me where I got the name Bloge Mayfair for my monk, I will give you bragging rights. So there you go. But back to the topic at hand, the Bard race. Your statistics can be a bit of a challenge. You're going to have to work with your dungeon master and make sure that he's okay if you have slightly bolstered stats. I've said before, and I'll say it again, 18 stats across the board, I can still kill the character. Stats really don't make a ton of difference. And honestly, if somebody came to me and said, I want to play a bard, then we would sit with the dice and we would roll until he got something that qualified for a bard. If it's what he wants to play, it's what he wants to play. By the way, if you're doing a bard, my experience has been, be sure to invest in Constitution. I'll explain why you want a high con when being a bard. So then we go to the Bard race. The races can be human or half-elven. I've never really understood why there can't be elven bards. I think this is some of the early prejudice in D&D, pro-human, to get people to play something other than the demi-human races. So this is a reason to play a human or a half-elf. I would allow an elven bard, but I would have to have the player kind of role play it for me a little bit. That would be the price I would exact for him taking the elven bard, is he would have to really play it up. So you begin as a fighter, and you can remain exclusively a fighter until you've achieved at least 5th level of experience. Anytime after that, but prior to attaining 8th, so you could be 5th, 6th, or 7th level fighter, you then switch over to being a thief. Again, sometime between 5th and 9th level of ability, So 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, we include 9th because it says 5th and 9th, which is inclusive. So we allow you to go up to 9th level as a thief if you choose. You then switch off and become a bard. So what does this mean? Well, it means that if 5th level fighter, you would be able to switch over to become a thief. If you switched over to become a thief at 5th level, you would only need 18,001 experience points. That's your sweet spot. You've just made 5th level. Congratulations. Yay. Now you switch over and you go thief, and you're only thief till 5th level. Those are the 2 minimum levels to qualify for bard. That 5th level thief is only 10,001 experience points. You only have to accumulate 2,800 or 28,002 experience points to get ready to attain your bardhood, and it's the equivalent of a 5th level MU. So the idea that a bard is unattainable is ridiculous. Of course it's attainable. Now, to attain it where I like bards, that's different. I believe a bard should be played up to 7th level, and that is a post-weapon specialization thing. And actually, I take that back. It was a pre-weapon specialization thing, too. In pre-weapon specialization, as a fighter, your fighter got 3-2 attacks at 7th level. To my mind, it was absolutely worth going to 7th level as my fighter in order to get the extra attack every other round. With specialization, of course, you can start out double specialized with your fighter, which I would recommend. So you're +3/+3 right there. And then when you get to 7th, you're getting 2 shots around with your specialized weapon. So now instead of 3-2, you're going 2-1. Big difference for just a little longer in your fighter. So if you stay in a fighter to 7th level, you're only looking at 70,001 experience points. And then again, with your 10,001 for your thief, you're at 80,002 experience points, which is the equivalent of a 7th level MU. So now you have a pretty optimized bard with the base 7th level thief, 7th level fighter, 5th level thief, starting out as a bard. That's pretty good. We're going to take a look at experience levels for bard. Bard starts out, essentially for the class itself, it starts at 0 experience points. At 2001, you throw an extra 6-sider. This is one of the rare times in D&D that you change over and you become something and you are lower level than your highest dual class level, yet you're throwing hit dice. This is why I think Constitution is important for a bard. If I have a fighter with an 18 con and he goes 7 levels, he's going to average roughly, and it's a little less than this, but he's going to average roughly 10 hit points per level or 70 hit points. If I stop at 5th level thief, I gain no more hit points. Once I become a bard, I start throwing a d6, and my value for my constitution goes from a +4 to a +2, but I'm still gaining on average about 5 to 6 points a level. And I can do that all the way up to 12th or 11th level bard. I'm throwing 6-siders, so that's pretty good. Bards end up with a ton of hit points by the time they actually make it up into bard and go up above, or not even above. Once they start bard and make 2nd level bard, they get a ton of hit points. You have to be neutral to be a bard, but you can be chaotic neutral, neutral evil, neutral good, or lawful neutral if you wish. I would allow a true neutral bard, but I'd have to have really good justification. I've never had anybody ask me to play one, but I would allow it. It still fits the neutrality thing. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at a little bit more here. Going back to the stats for just 1 second. High dex, yeah, you want a high dex. You absolutely would like a high dex, but the minimum I would accept if I was the character building the bard, the minimum constitution I would want would be a 17. At least then I'd get 3 points, bonus 3 points per level. At 7th level, I would average, about 60 points. I would absolutely want that. You need higher points. You're going to get more points later, but you've got to build through that whole time that you're going to be a thief, and you're going to be playing at a 7th level group, playing a brand new thief. And we're going to get into that in a little bit too, and how the DM can help you a little bit with that. So going back to this, experience points, it talks here about how experience level is in the bard only, and it only goes up to 23rd level. I've never had anybody achieve that level. 6-sided dice for accumulated hit points, and it goes on top of anything else you've earned. And possibly if you were to take, stop the fighter at 7th but go to 9th level thief, you would get a 6-sider plus con for 8th and 9th level. So you're looking at some pretty tall hit points here. All bard hit dice are in addition to existing hit dice. None are lost for becoming a bard. That's a strange way of putting it, but the book was written in 1973. But what it's basically saying is you keep all the hit points in the accumulated dice. If you're in an energy drain situation, for instance, you would lose energy drain in my game. You would lose it first from your bard levels, and then you would lose them from your thief levels, and then you would lose them from the fighter levels. That's how I would have it regress. I think that came up one time in our game. Our bard lost 2 levels to a vampire's touch, but he earned enough points to get back. Oh no, he paid for a restoration spell, got 1 level back, and then just sucked it up and earned the rest back. And then the druid, the bard now gets druid spells. And it starts talking about how he becomes, there is no level beyond 23rd. The bard gains druidic powers as a druid of the same level with the exception of druidic spells as explained below. And we'll go to the spells in a moment. But that's important. The druid, as I looked at in a video previously about a month ago, the druid gets a bunch of bonus powers. Our game, because of his bardic training, the bard gets all those druid powers as well, including the druid shape change. Once he hits 7th level bard, he gets the shape change as the druid power. And I always thought that was kind of an important thing, and it's definitely alluded to here, but it's never called out expressly. But he gets all the powers of a druid of commensurate level, except for his spellcasting, which is explained down here. So that's the way we do it in our campaign. He gets the identify plants, the pass without trace, and then he gets the druid shape change powers, as well as the other powers brought out in our Unearthed Arcana as he goes up in bard level. And then it talks here where his spells will be cast as druid, but never exceed the 12th level of druid casting level until you reach 23rd level, in which case you cast at 13th level. So for any spells that modify area of effect or anything based on spells, the druid is going to top out at 12, and then he's going to stay topped out at 12 till it's 23. That's fine. That's never been a problem in our game, that the limits on druid spells as far as area of effect and such, once you're up to 12th level, it's not a big deal. We've never had anybody bump their head against that and dislike it. So now we're going to take a look at a little bit at the druid chart itself. There's the experience level, is called out here. And it's a pretty decent experience level, or experience table. If we go to 40,001 experience points, we're a 7th level druid. So now, we're only looking at a minimum of 68,003 experience points. That's not much. And you've made 7th, 8th level druid. Bard. This is some crazy stuff. So now we go to the colleges. And then the colleges, they talk about here, it's an important distinction to a bard, and you will not associate with a bard of a lesser college. The exception to this rule are the magna alumni, who will happily aid any other bard at any level. I threw that rule out. It makes no sense to me that new bards won't help older bards won't help new bards. That's just silly. So I threw that rule away. I've never had a problem. Frankly, I've only had, I think, 2 games in my entire DMing where I've had 2 bards in the game, and those are both fairly recent. My player Craig plays a bard named Matt Mardigan. Everybody knows where that name came from. He plays his bard quite a bit, and my son plays Billy Shears, my legacy bard, and they played in a game not too long ago. It was a 2-nighter, so they played together, and I think I had one time in the 80s where the 2 bards played together. It was a different player playing a bard, and again, Matt Mardigan. It was the late 80s. So now we're going to the college thing, and now we're looking at additional languages known. These are bonus languages that bards get based on their level, and it can become a fair number. And this is just because of their ability to absorb knowledge and their love of knowledge and things like that. Then we have a charm percentage. This is the base chance a bard has to just sit and sing or play his non-magical instrument and charm somebody who's listening. And the charmed individual will sit there and listen for a round at least. If they fail their saving throw, they'll listen longer, and then the bard can implant a suggestion in song to them. It's kind of fun. You can think of some songs that you might want to go ahead and plant a suggestion in. I'm not really going to go adult with that here, but there's plenty of suggestions that can be planted. There are also some other strange things, anything you can suggest in the song. Now, if I have a bard trying to do that, I don't make them sing it to me. I do make them convey the idea to me. If the idea they're trying to convey is that the guard should let them pass, then they might want to sing, some song about going through, maybe break on through to the other side, anything like that. They have to give me an idea. It doesn't have to be a song, but they have to give me the idea of what their lyrics would be like. None of us are musicians, with the exception of my youngest son, who is musically inclined, but none of us are songwriters or lyricists. I don't insist that at my table, but I do make people convey the idea to me, what they would sing in the song. Now, there are some magic items that will boost this charm percentage, and we'll get into that in just a moment. And the next power is their legend lore and item knowledge percentage. This is actually an undersung power that bards have, and it's basically the opportunity to look at something. If you see a sword laying in a crypt, the bard can look at the sword and say, you know what, I might recognize this. Then the DM has to throw percentage dice. And if you hit his number or less, so 7th level bard would be looking at 16, make an 8th level bard, 7th level, 20%. If I threw a 20% or less on percentage dice, it comes up a 15. I then have to give the bard some information on this particular sword because he heard it in an old song, or he picked up some lore in a tavern or something like that. So that actually adds a ton of flavor to the bard character. It also is a great adventure hook for the DM, because with the ability to put an adventure hook out there like that, he looks at the sword in the crypt and I want the adventure to go forward. I don't make the percentage roll. I just say he made it, and I go forward and give him my adventure hook idea. So it's a great way for the DM to give credit to the bard for his knowledge, but to also to work in your story and have the story go forward. This limits it to, there's a list here of what the bard can determine by looking at it. So it's armor, miscellaneous weapons, miscellaneous items if usable by a druid, fighter, or thief. Potion, rings, rods, if usable by a druid, fighter, or thief. Scrolls and swords. Now that's fine. I also allow it to be places. Places play a huge part in song and story. And that's what a bard's stock and trade is. That's where he gets his soup from. So I allow the bard to have heard of this ancient crypt or this shrine or whatever based on his percentage dice. I don't let him get obnoxious about this. It's not going to be every word out of my mouth. I'm going to throw a dice and see if he knows something about it. But if it's a key part of my story, I'm going to throw the dice, or better still, I'm just going to say he made the roll and give out some more information that he may have picked up somewhere along his way. So it's a great way to introduce story hooks right through the character's ability. The next thing I'm going to take a look at is the items that the bards can and can't use. Leather or magical chainmail only. They can't wear normal chainmail, which is interesting. They cannot use a shield. Their weapons are club, dagger, dart, javelin, sling, scimitar, spears, staff, or sword, and the swords can be bastard, broad, long, or short swords. They can use flaming oil, which used to be a big thing in D&D, and then they cannot use poison unless they're neutral evil. I agree with everything on the list. What a good DM will do is make sure that as the bard is in his fighter levels and then going through his thief levels, throw a few magic items in his path that are going to be usable when he's a bard. Don't give him a two-handed sword that he can use that's +3 two-handed sword and it's his best weapon, that he can't use as a bard. Don't give him magical plate that he can use as a fighter but can't use as a thief or a bard. You don't have to cater everything to him, but I always make a point of throwing a magic item or two to him that he can use later on in his bard career. To that end, one of the other things I will do at lower levels when he's a lower level fighter or a low level thief is there are a couple of musical magical items like drums of panic, and a favorite at our table is the horn of blasting. I will go ahead and I will put those in the bard's path at lower levels. Because he gets bonuses when he uses those items when he's a higher level, I like to put those in his path. The examples given here are drums of panic. Anybody who hears the drums of panic makes a save at -1 if they're played by a bard. Horn of blasting, 50% greater damage. A lyre of building, double the effects. And then pipes of the sewers, double the number of rats in 1/2 the time that they're summoned. These are just a few of the magical items that are available in D&D, in the DMG, in the Unearthed Arcana, and Encyclopedia Magica. There's a bunch of magical items. I've gone ahead and I've adjusted some of those, and I've made sure that they get in his path. And then the other thing we have to talk about as far as the Bard goes are the various harps. In the Dungeon Master Guide, there are many harps that the Bards have access to. We're going to take a look at those, and I'm going to discuss how I've used the harps in giving them out to Bards. Going to the Dungeon Master Guide, we're going to take a look at the various harps, called lyres, or instruments of the Bard, that are called out here. And these are pretty interesting magic items. The instrument of the Bard start here, and there are 7 of them. And each of them works based on the college that the Bard is in. The Dungeon Master Guide, as we all know, was written after the Player's Handbook. So this is kind of neat because it keyed off what was in the Player's Handbook. And it gives the various powers, and it adds percentage chance to charm if you use the instrument while you're trying to charm somebody. So if you have a 15% and your instrument adds 20%, then you got a 35% chance of charming the individual. They also have individual powers underneath. Add 10% of the charm ability, cast an entangle once a day, shillelagh spell once a day, enable the Bard to speak with animals once per day, and then at first level, there's a 30% chance they'll work, but 70% chance the player will take 2 to 8 damage. So these instruments were meant to be used by the Bard of the college or higher, which is fine. A little strange that you'd use an instrument of a lower college, but you won't talk to somebody in a lower college. So again, that's why we threw that rule out. And the instruments of the Bards get stronger and stronger, and they are usable only by Bards, and they have some general powers, which is a protection from evil, 10-foot radius, become invisible, although you can hear them singing or strumming, levitate, and fly. So it's pretty interesting that you get these other powers with it, but what I did for my friend Craig's Bard, as he was progressing in levels, I went ahead and I took an instrument of the Bards, and I made it a stringed instrument, but I went to the artifacts table, and this was some long forgotten lyre of the Bards that had been around for generations and long forgotten, and he discovered it in this tomb, and they were able to retrieve it, and here are all the powers that he got out of it, and I actually made it an artifact. So rather than use these couple of powers here, which are not that great, I went ahead and I customized it to his character. As the Dungeon Master, I went ahead and I customized it a little bit so he, as a player, would enjoy it more and he'd get more utility out of it. That worked very well for us. In fact, I had, not too long after that, my character, Billy Shears, I had a DM return the favor. It wasn't Craig, it was a different DM. I had the DM return the favor. He had been in the game where I did that for Craig, so he did it for my Bard. He did the same thing. And it was a nice way to get really excited about the actual fabric of being a Bard and playing a Bard. So that's it for a Bard. Here's my final summary. I'm becoming a Bard. Absolutely, you can do it. The experience points are not the hindrance. The high stats are. Work with your Dungeon Master. Find the method at the beginning of the DMG or Unearthed Arcana that works for you. Roll until you get them, or if the DM allows you, just assign them. And move your character to where he needs to be to get his stats. Again, I recommend at least a 17 Constitution. If I have an 18, in my game we give 118 to start. You roll the other 6. We do play with comeliness. You roll the other 6 stats. The 18 for me with a Bard, a new up-and-coming Bard, would not be Dexterity or Strength. I would put it into Constitution. I want those hit points. This guy's going to be a high hit point machine by the time he's up there in Bard a little bit, and I'm absolutely going to want to benefit from that. With this 18 Con, he gets the +4 per level through his fighter levels, but he will get +2 for all of his Thief, if any, but definitely for all of his Bard levels. That will kick his hit points way into the stratosphere. And by the time everybody else is walking around strutting at 10th and 12th level, with maybe, 70, 80 hit points, this guy's going to be walking around with right around 100. So it's definitely a place I would put the high stat. Good strength is also important. Good dex is also important. You want to get the most out of your thief skills. But you got to remember, thief is more of a sideline for this character. Once you get into the Bard, it's about the music and it's about the spells. So now you want a wisdom that's going to get you some bonus spells as well. I would recommend at least a 14 for your wisdom if you can get it, because that'll start you getting 1 or 2 bonus levels without looking at the chart. I know 14 or 15 is where you start getting some bonus first level spells. So you're going to want high stats for this character. Dungeon Master, don't be afraid to let the guy have the high stats. It's not going to make a difference. What we've done each time a high stat character has come up, like a monk or a bard, we've just mentioned it to the group beforehand. Hey, so-and-so wants to play a monk. Do we care if the stats are a little higher in the creation? Everybody says no. So then I'll get with the player and we'll roll up something and we'll make something that'll make at least the minimum requirements. It's a strange artifact from first edition D&D that some of these are just ridiculously hard stats to get, and I don't let that be an impediment. If somebody really wants to play a bard at my table, they're absolutely welcome to sit down and play a bard. They can't have all 18s, but they can have enough stats to at least start them as a minimum level bard. So that's all I've got to say about the bard. I recommend it completely. Your experience points for a 7th level fighter, 5th level thief, brand new first level bard is only equal to a 7th level MU about halfway through his level. It's not a stopper. Take a look at the charts and you'll see what I'm talking about. With weapon specialization especially, bard is a very attractive class. So that's all I've got to say. Larry Anderson, I hope that was what you were looking for. I hope I've talked your son into playing one. I recommend it highly. I had a lot of fun playing Billy Shears through the years. And I was delighted to make him a legacy character to my son. Get by with a little help from your friends, as Billy sings. And that's what we've done. So we've had a couple characters go legacy, and Billy Shears is one of them. And he is active in my campaign under my son Adam, and he is doing very, very well. So that's it for today on page 121. I hope you liked what you heard and saw. I hope you liked the topic. If you did, please leave me some comments, like and subscribe. Still close to half of my views are from non-subscribers, so if you've been on the fence, come on aboard. Still trying to grow the channel. I hit that magic 1,000, but more is more, and I'm a greedy guy, so if you can help me out on that, I would appreciate it. And that's all I've got to say today. So happy loot playing, and I'll see you next time on page 121. Bards are the best.